Welcome back to HSI Consulting. Our channel talks about taxation and investment, especially for you who are aware that the tax are the issues and the investment are specifically about Indonesia. Right. Today I'm going to be talking about individual taxation for you guys who are coming to Indonesia to stay because of marriage or because of work or because you would like to retire in Indonesia. Here are some of the tax advice for you, and check it out. Right, from the beginning, I'll be talking about some 7 tips or 7 areas where I'll be exposing you with Indonesian tax knowledge and awareness, and where you can take your best advice and best tax planning as you come to Indonesia to work or to live or to retire. Let's get to the first point. I want to go to a little bit about Indonesian tax at the basic level. The basic level of Indonesian income tax is that it is a worldwide income tax. What does it mean? It means that it will subject to your tax of your income from anywhere, any part of the world. That might sound scary for a little bit for some persons, especially those who have their business going on in their home country or in anywhere or any part of the world going on. However, I'm sure that your motivation to come to Indonesia is more attracted to the business opportunity, or because of you fall in love with someone from Indonesia and getting married and come to Indonesia to settle down with them, with your spouse. Now, those motivation will need you to make the best use of whatever you have when you come to Indonesia, right? So the worldwide income tax issue is not so much scary if you know how to navigate the issues, all right? And most of the Indonesian counterparts in wherever you comes from, Indonesia has a tax treaty with your home country, and you must check if you have some exemptions of some facilities available as stated in the tax treaty between your home country and Indonesia. The other thing is to talk about the way the Indonesian tax office summarize or get to know about your income. You need to report your own income and your deductions or whatever you want to claim it in an annual basis. The tax return have to be filed there in the tax office. First of all, you need also to register yourself with the Indonesian tax office. But certainly that will be the case when you are here to stay, right? Just to report you that because of your assessment by your own, the tax office might encounter by checking on your data. They may come to you within 1 to 5 years after we submit a tax return. That means within that 5 years, the tax office may come to you. It may come to you in the first year. It may come back to you to check on your today, it may come to you, check on your tax return or ask questions about your tax return of last 4 years ago. That sounds a little bit crazy, but the thing is to get yourself more prepared with your tax return, you have all the data, the basis of your calculation and computation of your tax available in your records, and you might want to print it out just in case they come to you. You can just open up and look and check out what numbers, where it comes from, and what data have you used to compute that amount, right? So 5 years is the statute of limitation if you get any misreporting, but any periods beyond that, and on the 6 years, 7 years, it's unlikely the tax office may come to you because your tax return is deemed to be solid and confirmed, or sort of like untouched anymore. But what about keeping the records? It means that you still have to keep the records just in case the tax office will come back to you for the 6th or 7th year up to the 10th year. But it's very unlikely they will come to you unless you'll be doing a very massive or very glare tax evasion, I would say. But that will be the case of very rare situation, right? Let's move to the other part, which is telling you that Indonesia has contributed itself into G20 countries. We just happen to have G20 conventions here in Bali, and automatic exchange of information was part of the initiative that has been going on since a few years ago, that between the rich countries and the many countries around the world, they have committed to do the exchange of information for the tax purposes, where this is a G2G, government to government initiative and actions that they exchange the balance of their assets and their income for anyone who have an income in their country, or report their income or have the income, such as you have savings or your loans from some countries where you don't reside there, or where don't you live there, or you're in home country that you have some time deposits there, and it triggers or earns some interest income. So the interest income itself will be transacted. The information of that interest income will be exchanged between the home country to the country of Indonesia for the purpose of tax reporting. So make sure when you have your income from your home country or the other countries that you place your fund, you do report it also in Indonesia, in order for the Indonesian to get to know and cross-check and confirm that the income has been included in your tax return, right? The other thing about Indonesian specifically is that Indonesia has respected that a married male man will supposed to pay tax not only for himself, but also for the whole country, for the whole family, including the spouse. I acknowledge that in many other countries, spouse may need to only separate their taxation and probably their income affairs or anything else, or their assets separately from their husband. But in Indonesia, you may want to get used to the joining of the income and be reported in one tax return. The third part that I would like to expose to you is about what is taxable here and what are not taxable in Indonesia. I would say that most of the incomes, whatever that triggers you to increase your wealth, most probably will be taxable here in Indonesia. All right. Such as employment income. If you exercise your income, you come here to work for a company. You've been hired by a country that has a business here, or set up a company here, investment here. Your salaries will be subject to tax, right? If you split your salaries between here and in your home country, be aware that part of the home country home country split salaries might also be attracted to Indonesia and be subject to Indonesian tax. The other part is you're here to retire in Indonesia. There are some issues that varies between the country and the country, whether it will be taxable for the income that you earn from the pension fund, right? But let's get to it. I'll be giving you some examples of whether there are some countries they'll be taxable, some countries they're not taxable. It is really subject to the available what is stated there in the tax treaty between Indonesia and your home country. The other part is if you are here for the business income. Of course, if you have a business income by yourself, you declare under your personal level, it will be taxed on you. But the interesting part is that you can also put away your business and put it under a separate company, which is a PMA company, then only be taxed on the PMA level and not to expose it to your personal level. The other part is that you have your extra fund where you invest it anywhere else. You can also choose to invest in Indonesia, but the capital gain is taxable. However, if you put your investment into buying a portfolio of shares in publicly available, like in Jakarta Stock Exchange, those shares will be taxable very lower at the 0.1% of whatever transacted. It's not based on your income or loss that you made. The tax is based on the transaction. So regardless whether you sell at loss or gain, you'll be taxed, and that is final. That is very straightforward. So certain things that if you put an asset into the share, where the share is non-public, the dividend that you take away from the profits, out of the profit that you had, it can be tax exempted. I'll show you later on or in other subjects, because this will be a way different stories or explanation about how dividend can be tax exempted, and I guarantee you it's not very complicated to get that exemption. Right? The other part I'll be talking to you is about that you are taxable whenever you are only a tax resident in Indonesia. Suddenly, whenever you come here, you only stay for 2 weeks or probably only 2 months. It's unlikely that you will be taxed in Indonesia. So you're still a foreigner. You're not here to stay. You will not be taxable yet because you're not a tax resident. A tax resident is by definition of whether you plan to work and live in Indonesia from the day one, but that's on your plan, and that's only when you apply for such as like kitas or your kitab, you're getting your kitab. Those are the showing of your intention to live in Indonesia from the day one. The other part is where you don't plan to stay, but because of that accumulated of your intent of your business that you commute, but then relatively over the period of 12 months, you already have spent at least 180 days there here. You will also be considered as a tax resident and get yourself a tax ID in Indonesia, because you'll be taxable here. The fourth part is talking about your home country income that might be subject to Indonesia tax, right? So as I said earlier, you'll be subject to worldwide income tax in your home country. If you leave your home, rent it out to somebody else because it's empty, right? So you're coming to Indonesia to live with your spouse or work here, and your rental income is unfortunately probably will be, most likely I would say, will be subject to Indonesian tax. But whatever you have paid on the rental income and be reported in your home country is going to be acknowledged in Indonesia as a tax credit. So my word of advice is, while you are here not for the long term, you probably don't do any selling of your house, because the capital gains coming from the selling of the house might be subject to Indonesian tax. Or if you want to do it, your one way, you have a one-way ticket to Indonesia and you're leaving your country for good, at least means not in terms of nationality, but then selling of your assets, do it before you come to Indonesia permanently, right? The other part is to consider to use a company or a trust, a sort of a trust to hold your assets and to receive income. That means it's applicable for those who have a significant numbers of assets. Then you rely your income from the asset that you have put on portfolio and give you good yields. You can have set up a company easily in Indonesia or anywhere in your home country, and only be subject to tax at the level of your company. Before then you extract dividends from it, then it will be subject, it will make yourself avoiding being taxable at your personal level, right? So the fifth part I'm talking is about tax on investment income. Here are the interesting part, that you get some exempted income if you put your money here in Indonesia. Here are the places or the situation where you may get exemption. Dividend income is definitely tax exempted, right? Either is because of the PMA company that you have, you take dividends out from it, or if you have an existing company in your home country or in the other part of the country where it distribute dividends, the dividends can be tax exempted, but then I'll be talking about what are the terms and conditions to satisfy the such exemption. The other part is to talk about that some interest coming from investing in sovereign bond of Indonesia, it probably will be taxed. Mostly, I will tell you that they will be tax exempted. Yeah, severally, those bonds coming from like ORI or certain sovereign bond coming up from Indonesian government, they most likely will be tax exempted. You must check with your bond issuer or your investment brokerage to check whether those interests are tax exempted. Also, that in general in the case, mutual funds issued in Indonesia and invested in Indonesia market, when you buy it, you get a capital gain. The capital gain will be tax exempted, right? The other interesting part that if you distribute your wealth to your heirs, your children's, while you are here in Indonesia, the inheritance will be tax exempted for sure, right? The sixth part that I'm be talking about, especially for those of you who are coming to Indonesia to retire. Remember that you come to Indonesia to retire because you can do it so. Because Indonesia can help you issue retiring visa or retiring permit, right? But subject to certain rules that you don't you can't work, you cannot work here, and so there are certain rules that you must hire a maid in your house, and you must have a guaranteed by buying a house or renting a house in Indonesia. All the details you must check on with your immigration agent about it. So I'll be talking about the pension part and whether it's taxable or not. It varies, as I said before, it varies from country to country. For example, Australia retiree, if you come to Indonesia to retire in Bali or in Jakarta or any other part of the world, you may need to pay tax in Indonesia. The Australian tax office may impose up to 50% of tax at source. They probably will do it because it is what it's based on tax treaty between Indonesia and Australia. It looks from the Japan tax treaty that Japan retiree may enjoy tax exemption. Yeah, it's good news for those who the Japanese who have a public pension distributed to them. And the Swedish retiree may also need to pay tax in Indonesia because when I check the tax treaty between Swedish and Indonesia, probably they are a bit silent that or allow Indonesia to also impose tax on the pension income, right? Last, about personal tax rate. If you're thinking about the tax rate in Indonesia, your first 54k rupiah that you earn in a year will be exempted. That's not very much, but that gives you some comfort for a very, very basic level of your income just to support you with some probably your consumptions. But starting from there, up to 60k of the Indonesian rupiah, it will be subject to 5%. Next, progressively will be subject to higher of 15% up to the thickness of 190 millions. And the next level, the fourth level, if you go higher your income up to another 250 millions a year, it will be subject to 25%. And lastly, if you have an income, it's not last one, this is the fourth layer of tax will be 30% for 4.5 billion of income in annual. I mean, when I'm saying 4.5 is 4.5 billions of Indonesian rupiah of your annual income. So total of that, this 5 layer will mix that you have your accumulated annual income by 5 millions altogether. And if you make an income above that number, the rest is subject to 35%. So I'm going to expose to you and give you advice about this personal tax level. It looks a bit higher on the high side, but those are, I'm sure that those are available or subject to those rates only for the employment cases, or those who want to expose themselves with their professional income. They are coming here to do their professional jobs and get the income, and those are the rates available. And if your income are not as high as that, probably at the end of the day you will end up paying tax on some sort of like between 5 to 15%. And investment income are not subject to this level of income, but because mostly investment income will be subject to final tax coming from 0.5% to 15%. But those investment income, I would specifically tell you that they are subject to, they are for the investment income of the financial instruments that you have here in Indonesia. If your investment income come from the overseas, there will be a different story. Alright, they will be subject to this normal rate. And lastly, if you have a business or professional income, I may also suggest you to take forms of the PMA, set up a PMA on PMA company where you be exposed to tax only at the business level, and it surely will be subject to lower level of taxation with if some of very good deductions, but certainly you need to take diligence of making your books records available for the tax office to check any time when they want to, right? Remember, so all those issues are important, among the most important issues that you need to know when you want to come to Indonesia to stay and be exposed to Indonesian tax. And for those of you who are still curious or have questions for me, please state here at the down below of the make a comments there. You think this is what your friends or your colleagues supposed to know or supposed to read? Please share to your friends. Alright, I'll be talking to you for another interesting subject, or you also may suggest what subjects you find interesting, and I'll be talking to you soon after that. Bye for now and stay success.